When Kamala announced she was running for president, it was stated Republicans would not have to run a single negative ad against her because Democrats and leftists would do their work for them, and that's exactly what happened. The vast majority of the critiques and criticisms I saw of Harris came from within her own party, and fast forward a few months, the exact same thing is happening to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who is a rising star in the Democratic Party. I've seen a lot of people say Jasmine should consider running for president. However, if the backlash she is receiving, a lot of it again coming from the Democratic Party and leftists after calling Republican Governor Gregory Abbott Hot Wheels, if that is any indication of whether she is going to be on the receiving end of constant scrutiny and critique from Democrats, we do not need to throw another brilliant Black woman into the fire in pursuit of the Oval Office. Immediately no. Aloha, beautiful humans. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome back if we've been locked in. My name is Sasha, and today we're talking about the criticism Jasmine Crockett is receiving and how a lot of that critique and criticism is coming from within the Democratic Party and the leftist house cats. The behavior continues. We are never going to beat the allegations. Last week, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett referred to and critiqued Governor Greg Abbott, referring to him as Hot Wheels, which is apparently a nickname many of his own constituents and residents of Texas have referred to him as. I have occasionally heard a few people myself before this entire incident. I have occasionally heard a few people refer to him that way, but the fact that Jasmine Crockett is receiving so much backlash, it is an indicator for me of a couple of things, particularly the fact that a lot of this backlash is coming from other Black women and people in the Democratic Party, at least the most vocal criticism of her. And yes, I expected a fair amount of criticism to come from the Republican Party, people who are more MAGA leaning, because this is just what they do. Hypocrisy is par for the course. However, I feel a type of way about the criticisms that I am seeing coming from the Democratic Party, coming from leftists. And just like I said, we are never beating the house cat allegations. Ever, ever, ever. Now, before we get any further into this video, I think we need to let's just level set. We are all on the same page. Her referring to him as Hot Wheels was absolutely ableist. There is no question about that. It is important to be able to critique people, call people to the carpet, and just say that right is right and wrong is wrong. Her calling him Hot Wheels is an ableist comment. We're not debating on that. However, I want to have a larger conversation because while this critique is absolutely valid, it is also poor timing, and the veracity of it in comparison to what the other side has said and done is unwarranted. A lot of leftists and Democrats are moral purists, and this moral superiority, it goes back to this whole line of thinking, when they go low, we go high. And I understand that there was at a certain point a time and place for this mentality. We have outgrown that. Like Jay-Z said, we are past kneeling, and we are certainly past the point where this mentality even applies to the current state of politics. I love Michelle Obama down, down, down. I got the book. She is goals. I apply that mentality of thinking to so many aspects of my life. However, the current political climate we find ourselves in, this mentality of, oh, when they go low, we go high, it has not served Democrats at all. It has not served Democrats for the past, I would honestly say, going on 10 years now. This messaging has not served us, and it's outdated. And I think in part, to a certain degree, Democrats holding onto this moral superiority and moral purity has made it so challenging for us to get anything done because we spend so much time infighting amongst ourselves like freaking house cats, while Republicans and the MAGA, they move like dogs in a wolf pack towards one common goal. Even if they do not agree with certain rhetoric and strategies, they are focusing on the larger goal at hand. And I've talked about this before in a separate video, which I will drop down into the comments and also tag here. So I'm not going to get too into the whole Democratic leftist house cat behavior. I'm not going to get into that because I've already done a separate video on that. However, I will say, I think what has happened with the Democratic Party that has caused us to fracture so much is the fact that so many people are focused on their own singular goals and fighting about what is the best way to go about it instead of just getting it done. And it is so hard to unify under one strategy and move forward. And that's what leads to all of this fracture and infighting, which is why it's so hard for us as a party. It is becoming increasingly more challenging to get on page with one central messaging and move forward. And it's kind of frustrating. It's a double-edged sword because this is where, in a way, our intersectionality is our strength, that we are thinking about so many other people beyond ourselves. But it also hurts us because we are a very diverse party, whereas Republicans are generally of the same demographic and mentality and mindset. And so as I've been thinking about it the past couple of years, it may be time for a new party to form from the Democratic Party, kind of like MAGA took off from the Republican Party. The party needs to transition completely if we want to get things done, because as we are moving now, it is going to be challenging. I just foresee a very long road ahead of us if we do not get on one page with our messaging. Anyways, time will tell, and this video is not about that. So if you spend any amount of time on TikTok and your algorithm is algorithming like mine has been algorithming, TikTok has been in shambles over the past few days as a result of the fallout from this whole Hot Wheels comment. There's one creator that sparked all of this by calling out Jasmine Crockett and her comment, saying that Jasmine is looking for soundbite moments and is trying to be funny, and that it's giving performative in nature. This creator further went on to say that Congresswoman Crockett is acting like a quote reality TV star unquote, and she was undermining the work she has been doing by quote doing this BS. And I guess the BS is being outspoken or engaging in what she believes to be performative behavior. I saw another video of her where she referenced selling merch. I don't know if this is what this creator was referencing, and I'm not sure if Crockett herself was selling this merchandise, but I did see a photo of Crockett in a shirt with the whole quote against MGT, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Marjorie Greene Taylor. She called her a bad built, oh my God, this is like a tongue twister, a bad built bleach blonde butch body. Oh my God. Anyways, I did see Jasmine wearing one of those shirts, but I don't know if it was a shirt that Jasmine was selling. But anyways, yeah, this creator was saying that, by doing this BS, it is undermining whatever work Jasmine was doing. And it didn't seem like this creator was in the know about what actually Jasmine has been doing while she has been in Congress. But she was saying that Jasmine engaging in what she believes to be performative behavior, and that calling Governor Abbott Hot Wheels is taking away from whatever legislation she was trying to pass. And she does not want her politicians to be celebrities, because as elected officials, they are there to serve the people, and they need to stop trying to be quote popular unquote. And listen, I'm not gonna do everybody's entitled to her opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. That's what I will say about this. I've seen a lot of good takes that have come from this creator's video, and I think the conversation can be multifaceted. However, what I dislike about this take is that it is unnecessary and further chips away at the lack of unity that we have as a party to begin with. Then there's the fact that I really hate to see Black women attacking one another on such a public platform like TikTok, because it gives way to the stereotypes that exist already amongst us as a community, that we cannot just get along. And listen, I'm not sitting here saying, oh, we need to unify, because white people are watching. I'm not saying that, but I do feel that this critique, this take was ill-timed. And for the most part, I just dislike the fact that it was unnecessary. This is not what we need at this moment, given our current political climate with everything going on, especially since Jasmine Crockett is already herself on the receiving end of a fair amount of censorship and on the receiving end of a lot of death threats. Now she has to worry about getting online and people who aren't even her own constituents tearing her down, like, for what? Again, it's that infighting amongst people who are more left leaning, people identify as Democrats. It's this infighting that is unnecessary. And I have such a love hate relationship with so many social media platforms, because while this is a way to get certain issues and messaging out in front of a large amount of people, these apps are so powerful. You can reach millions, billions of people with just one video. At a certain point, it becomes irresponsible to have certain conversations online when you recognize what is at stake, when you are able to look at the bigger picture and see beyond your platform or the check that you're going to get at the end of the month. And I'll come back to that a little bit, because a lot of this rhetoric that we see, a lot of these hot takes that we are seeing happening online, they are absolutely rage bait, done with the intention of evoking very strong emotional reactions out of people in the name of a check. And when you look at the timing, a lot of these outrage cycles occurs. It is always very conveniently at the end of the month when people need to run up their TikTok bag or a check. I call out this behavior time and time and time again because it is so obvious to me. And while I am observing this, I will never feed into this type of behavior by engaging with that type of content. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to give my commentary on it, but I'm not going to reward people for engaging in this type of rage bait behavior. But anyways, going back to the topic at hand, Republicans absolutely fight within themselves. However, I very rarely see them boxing it out on social media, especially when they are losing. And while there are very few things that Republicans should be our litmus test or be an example of, it would be so much nicer if Democrats would just carry and hold the same energy, keep the same energy, be able to walk in lockstep with one another, even if you don't 110% agree, because there is such a lack of unity amongst leftists, amongst Democrats, as well as the fact that there are a lot of social media personalities, influencers, and content creators who do make political content. And like I said earlier, I already referenced this a little bit. I feel like a lot of them do not recognize the power that their platforms have beyond social media and how they can impact what it ultimately ends up happening in real life. There are certain content creators I saw during the election that were spreading misinformation, disinformation. Some of them aligned as Democrats, but I will say the vast majority of them called themselves communists or socialists or leftists. So they were coming from a niche group within the Democratic Party. However, all of this rhetoric, all of this infighting, all of this negative messaging, it absolutely hurt Harris in the long run. However, fast forward a few months later, these are the same people who are asking where Harris is and are again critiquing Democrats. And it's like, listen, you cannot have it both ways. You can't try to grift off of critiquing Harris and Democrats, and then when she loses, which is what you obviously wanted to happen, either you obviously wanted her to lose or you are just an agent of chaos. But either ways, you were making content that was very negative towards her, very critiquing of her, very divisive. And now that she is lost, you are now creating content about the fact that Democrats lost and talking about everything that they could be doing better, simultaneously asking, where is she and why is she not saving us? I saw this woman who went viral for asking on Valentine's Day where Harris was and being really upset about the fact that Harris was posting pictures of her and Doug on Valentine's Day celebrating their love. And it's like, no, sit down, Karen. You do not get to ask where this woman is after she ran a campaign to try and make things better. People actively voted against her. She's not an elected official. Leave Harris alone. But anyways, it's like all of this criticism and negativity, it's people coming from within the party. And it's like these people do not know what they want. And it puts elected officials like Crockett in a very tough position, because at this point, if you are a Democrat in an elected position, you are basically damned if you do and damned if you don't. Even if you don't win the office that you were striving for, that you were running for, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Congresswoman Crockett is a rising star within the Democratic Party, And I've talked a lot about, or I've referenced this earlier, how the Democratic Party is struggling with its messaging. I think that is in part true. However, I think what is the more present and clear struggle to me is we are struggling with where we are at a crossroads, in the sense that you have people who are actively trying to cling onto this Democratic Party of the past, being pacifists, going high when they go low, rising above, and not getting into the mud with Republicans. However, the present day opposition we are working with, that is the behavior they are engaging with. That is the behavior they are engaging in, and they are getting things done. That is the type of politics that they are participating in, that they are winning with, and our rights are actively being stripped away. It is not helpful. It is not helpful in this moment to be tone policing and engaging in respectability politics when it comes to how we are communicating with people who are actively bigots, with people who are hateful, with people who are racist, and with people who are actively trying to strip us of our rights. The timing of this critique, it's just poor timing. If the conversation had simply been about her comment being ableist, I 110% would have understood that and agreed with it, because like I said, we're not going to act like that comment wasn't ableist. It 110% was. However, understanding the political climate we are currently in and these cults of personalities that are appealing to a lot of people, saying that politicians are just here to serve the people and that we don't need to know anything about their private lives and that they need to be behind the scenes, that may have been the politics of yesteryear. However, that is not taking into account the reality that we are living in today. That makes it so our politicians are very front facing, at least in America. Do I wish that wasn't the case? Absolutely. Do I wish we did politics and elections like other people? Absolutely. Do I wish we could go back to the days where politicians were only heard on radios, not seen on TV? You had to, in order to understand what a politician was talking about, you actively had to go out and search their messaging. You had to read what their policies were. Absolutely. Do I wish we could go back to the days where we weren't seeing ads about them being run 24/7 everywhere, where I wasn't getting 50 million text messages a day about certain things? Absolutely. It is information overload, and not only is it information overload, it also gives the opportunity for misinformation and disinformation to spread. However, given the current political climate we are in America in 2025, that's what we need to be responding to, not trying to take it back to this time of yesterday, of yesteryear, and certainly not trying to police how women of color, specifically Black women, not trying to police how they are showing up in elected office. Maxine Waters went through the same thing, and Ilhan Omar, she is going through the same thing. AOC gets the same kind of backlash. However, I noticed that it is to a lesser degree, and I think it is targeted. We cannot ignore the role misogyny plays in a lot of the way people respond to and talk about Black women. Even Black women ourselves talking about other Black women, because internalized misogyny is real. Internalized self-hatred is also real. I do not believe AOC is on the receiving end of the levels of backlash and vitriol Jasmine Crockett gets simply because of misogyny. Maxine Waters experienced the same thing a few years ago when she was in her Reclaiming My Time era, and a lot of people had negative things to say about that, despite the fact that she was working very hard for her constituents. And that's another thing that I took issue with. To say that Jasmine Crockett is trying to become a reality star and she is trying to get soundbite moments and they are taking away from what she is doing, that is a reflection of the fact that a lot of the people critiquing her have actually no idea what she is doing and what she has done. It is the same way people tried to critique Harris, saying that she was, quote, doing nothing. Meanwhile, Harris as vice president had so many wins, and it's the same way with Jasmine Crockett. In her time holding elected office, she has since been elected to Congress multiple times representing Dallas, and in that time, she has introduced bills that would create online voter registration and same-day voter registration, increase ballot drop boxes, codify drive-through voting, and allow voters who will turn 18 in time for the general election to be able to vote in the primary. This is just a few of what she is doing in her time that she has held elected office. If you have no idea what she's doing and you just think that she is trying to get soundbite moments, please check the resume before you critique people. Just check the resume, okay? A quick Google search will tell you everything you need to know. Overall, I honestly think while I try to respect everybody's opinions and where they're coming from, because I do think that I think even if I don't disagree, what I try to do is at the very least understand where people are coming from while forming their opinions, because we all have opinions, and like everybody says, just the same way we got booties, okay? Like, take from that what you will. Yeah, while I try to understand where everybody is coming from, this is just like one criticism I really cannot get down with, because as I mentioned earlier, I do think it's poor timing. I also think it's really disingenuous given our current political climate. Like, really, you're focusing on her calling Governor Abbott Hot Wheels, which, yes, is actively ableist, and we can acknowledge that. However, are you also taking the time to acknowledge that in the past 2 going on 3 months of this administration, hundreds of thousands of people have been impacted by this negatively, and that is just within a few weeks. The people who will feel this will go to the millions. We will feel what is happening now through generations, through years to come. Hundreds of people, thousands of people have lost their jobs. DEI and any mention of it has been stripped at all levels of the government, and this has also seeped into the private sector. We are also headed into a recession. In the grand scheme of things, considering all of that, Jasmine Crockett's comments are the least of our worries, and it seems like an easy thing to focus on and for some creators themselves to get a soundbite moment. It's the end of the month. I'm not surprised. The timing is unsurprising because, as I mentioned earlier, and as I've done a separate video on, rage bait is a content strategy for a lot of content creators, influencers, and social media personalities. This is a part of their practice. This is a part of their content strategy, especially if they are monetized. It is the end of the month, and I just generally notice now that I've started paying attention to this behavior, I noticed that a lot of these outrageous takes and these rage cycles pop up around this time of the month like clockwork. It's not new at this point. To wrap this all up, because this doesn't need to get too much longer, most of us can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can call out Jasmine Crockett. We can absolutely call out that her comment was ableist, and hey, we don't do that. That's unnecessary. He cannot help that he is in a wheelchair. We can also understand that her comment, at least the outrage of it, is absolutely another talking point for Republicans, another hypocritical talking point, but it is also manufactured outrage, and it is not the most pertinent thing that is presently occurring that needs our time, energy, or attention, especially with everything else going on. Jasmine Crockett was recently asked if she regretted her comments or to clarify them, and she stood 10 toes down. And listen, if people are actively concerned about what is going on in the halls of Congress and what is going on in our country, that you would get so spun up over a comment like Hot Wheels, I hope you are generating and giving the same time, energy, and attention to the things that are actively happening in this country that you don't like, and you are contacting your elected officials and seeing what you yourself can actively be doing to create the change that you want to see. Otherwise, the criticisms that you're making sound like you're just trying to get a soundbite moment for yourself or engage in a hypocritical outrage cycle. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is such a breath of fresh air. She is a beacon of light and a fresh face in a party that is in desperate need of a facelift. And while I do not believe we deserve her, if she gets us closer to where we need to be at the moment to be able to react, respond, and message in real time to the changing state of politics, I hope she's here for a good, long time. And if you are looking for the same change, if you are trying to create a better way or change the system, get in the booth. But beyond getting in the booth, because hopping online to create divisive rhetoric about someone who's actively doing something while you stay silent about bigots, racists, and truly awful people who are using their power and position to actively make things in this country so much harder for people. This is the type of leftist house cat behavior that we need a lot less of. And if you think Jasmine Crockett isn't helping, or you're a Democrat critiquing Jasmine Crockett, especially publicly or online, you definitely aren't helping, and you are absolutely a part of the problem. We need to be moving forward, not backwards. Let me know your thoughts about this whole Hot Wheels scandal. Do you think that people are blowing it out of proportion? Do you think people are losing focus? And do you hope that Jasmine Crockett's outspokenness, her ability to just speak very plainly and not fall victim to this very outdated mentality of politics that Democrats have taken on, that is no longer serving Democrats and leftists too? I want to know your thoughts about it. Drop down in the comments and let me know. Do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, peace out.